Welcome to Geeks Worldwide presents Preston Key. I'm, of course, your host, Michael Schluger, and this is episode 293. We have a fantastic show for you. Lots of stuff to talk about. Let me introduce the crew. First off, we have Sandy Chen. Welcome back to the show, Sandy.
Hello.
Good to have you. And, of course, Connor Howard.
Hey, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Great.
So there is stuff to talk about, but I want to sort of give this, I don't know if I should tell people or not, but I feel like I owe them the disclaimer. We don't have any what the fuck stories for this week. It's crazy. I couldn't find a single what the fuck story. I looked. But for this 1 week, there's just, I don't know. The world is crazy, but not the gaming world. World crazy, gaming world, more or less okay.
Things are mellowing out a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah. So our first story up, obviously the Paris Gaming Week is on. A ton of trailers dropped from PlayStation. And some of them are causing a little bit of controversy. Specifically, I know the Detroit Become Human trailer and also the Last of Us 2 trailer, both sort of were shocking for different reasons. Let's do one at a time. So let's start with Last of Us 2. What do you guys think of the trailer? Did it make you want to play the game? What, if anything, about it surprised you, shocked you, or interested you, as the case may be?
Go ahead.
I'm not sure how it connects to the game. Because I just needed more explanation as to why there's women in the trailer that are getting victimized, or one is hung and the other's elbow's broken.
The answer is we don't know, right? It's
and we don't know who these people are.
No.
So
we don't know. We know that there's obviously some sort of religious undertones, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think the woman mentions the apostles. Where are the other apostles? And then she gets spat on. And we know that the bad guys, or the zombies, or whatever you want to call them, were referred to as demons. Again, we're not sure why or what the case was. I'm trying to remember what they were called in the first game. They definitely were not
infected clickers, runners,
clickers. Yeah. They weren't called demons. So there's definitely some sort of religious overtones or undertones,
some kind of culty stuff going on.
Yeah. But beyond that, we don't really know, right?
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, for me, I want to play it no matter what. So when it comes out, I'll play it no matter what. But like, just being given this tidbit as a fan of the first one, to me, it just kind of shows me, like, compared to what we had in the first Last of Us, this kind of shows me that Naughty Dog isn't really shying away from looking at what becomes of people when society breaks down and disappears. And I think the culty overtones are actually kind of in line with what was in the first one also. There was a villain in the first game. Spoilers, I'm sorry, but if you haven't played it by now, I don't know.
Shame on you.
I won't. Okay, there was a villain who had sort of a faith-based approach to what he was doing, sort of a spiritual approach to what he was doing. So it's not really out of the ordinary for Naughty Dog to explore that direction of people turning to superstition, one could say, or spirituality in the apocalypse. As far as the women thing goes, like, you got to understand, I mean, they're trying to tell a story in which people, men and women, people in general, are subjected to extreme hardships to survive. They victimize each other to survive. They put themselves at risk to survive. And yeah, it was pretty over the top. I definitely agree with that. It was shocking. Like, I know there's some real hardcore shit that goes down in the first Last of Us, but like, even here with the trailer for the second one, that's like kind of taking it up a notch. And so I think I understand the criticism of people saying, oh, you're just trying to shock us into buying a game. But I think at the same time, it's like they're trying to show you what kind of world you're going to be in when you play this game. I think that came through, as a message.
For me, the thing that like jumped out at me, violence aside, and I know it sounds weird, but it's just how goddamn pretty this game looks. I mean, like,
yeah,
I understand we're seeing scenes of extreme, graphic violence here, but the lighting, the way the fire is, the way the rain is falling, like this thing is really coming close to that uncanny valley line, especially in that early shot, which if you're watching along with us, when the woman is thrown to the ground and she's tied up, I mean, the way the light plays across her face and she's like clearly in pain because her hands are tied behind her back, and there's just so much visually going on that it looks like a movie. Other games have come close to that, like the Order 1886, right? That was the name of the Order something
1886.
Yeah, so that one was also considered to be extremely cinematic, but man, Naughty Dog is on point here. Like,
yeah, between The Last of Us and Uncharted, they've been just really setting benchmarks for, I think, console graphics for the last few years, just really breaking milestones, I think. And Chapter 2 of The Last of Us looks insane visually. I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that the surfaces look wet from the rain, the way that the skin glistens and the shirt sticks to the woman's chest, and there's a lot happening here graphically. And I'm really curious whether like this is sort of an FMV cutscene kind of dealio, or if this is like an in-engine sort of cutscene, or if it's an FMV or what's going on. Because if the entire game looks like this, oh my god, like you'll probably spend the first hour just wandering around and looking at stuff. So
yeah, there's a lot happening in it. It's like an assault on the senses in a lot of ways. But one thing that was missing is just that, Sandy, I think you brought this up earlier, is just like context of like what's happening, who is it happening to, why should we care? And I think that comes back to the argument of this is just kind of shock value of a trailer.
Sure.
In a way, it's also visual value. It's like shock value of holy shit, that's a woman's arm being broken by a hammer, and also holy shit, look at those graphics. It's like kind of it's like kind of a double whammy of look at what's happening. And I do want more context of like, I need to find out who these people are. There was a theory that the woman being hanged, I'm sorry, I'm a grammar nerd, was Ellie's mother. And I need to know what that bears out as. So it's like, I'm more curious now, having seen this trailer, but I know that some people are kind of turned off by it, and I respect that. But for me, I'm just like, I need more. I want more,
I mean, if you were a fan of the first one, then I can't imagine anyone who was a fan of the first one not picking up the second one.
Right.
And
I mean, I think it's their choice of using this scene. Could they have not chosen this particular scene to exemplify their game?
Well, see, here's the thing. I think that they're sort of doing a riskier thing because they're not featuring Joel and Ellie, right? Any scene depicting Joel and Ellie would immediately, make the viewer nostalgic and whatever. I think it's a little more risky for them to all of a sudden show us this weird, graphically violent scene with a bunch of characters that we don't know. I think it sort of catches your attention almost a little more than if it was just Joel and Ellie.
I agree. Yeah.
Because you're like, what is this? What is going on? So it grabs your attention and then doesn't let go. But let's move on. Let's talk about the other trailer that caused a little bit of controversy, the Detroit Become Human trailer, which the gameplay it was showing off wasn't that new. We had seen it before. We had seen very similar stuff at E3. What was different was the scenario that we were watching, which involved a father that was abusive to his child, and I imagine abusive to the people around him as well. Also a bit shocking in its own way. And it, the trailer indicates that there's a possibility that one of the possible endings of the scenario is that the child dies by the father's hand, although it happens off camera. What was your guys' takeaway from this one? Are you more excited about the game, less excited about the game? What caught your attention, if anything?
Yeah, it was a different tone. from the previous Detroit Become Human trailer we saw at E3, where
Right. More
that one
about
was-
revolution, right?
yeah, that one was more like about taking action, breaking into some place and like your options of doing that. This
Right.
involved like a android maid or nanny or something like that,
Right.
and her perspective of the abusive father-daughter relationship she was seeing. So yeah, I saw this as like a different angle of the same game, and I saw it as the developers trying to show off like these are all the lives that you're going to see play out in this game, and they're very different from each other, and you're going to have a lot of opportunities to affect them and decide for them. And so I think it was trying to show off the variety of the game, but it was also trying to show off like just the sheer volume of possibilities that your choices can bring about, that your decisions in the game can bring about. And of course, like many mature rated games, they use extreme kind of circumstances to show that, to give you that. And one of them being, like you said, a daughter off screen beaten to death or in some way killed by her father. And I'm totally fine with it. I know it's like uncomfortable, but like for me, I need to know that the developer is all in on that concept of real people, and their actions having real consequences. I think this shows that those developers aren't afraid to really go all the way with those circumstances, with those scenarios. And it comes back to what I think is like the decision that we as players, we as a game community, as the industry have to make, where are we going to demand that these games are considered an art form, but at the same time impose these artistic restrictions on them? Because I don't think you can have it both ways. You need to have the artistic freedom to express real scenarios like this. I mean, that unfortunately children are occasionally killed by abusive parents in real life, and if the game wants to reflect real life, it's going to have to not shy away from stuff like that.
Right. I mean, this one is obviously set in the near future, but
Sure.
very much a slice of life. And I think it's going to try and highlight disparity between like the rich and the poor. I'm sure is going to come in here, because from the opening shot, you see like sort of like the suburbs of Detroit, which are run down, and then in the distance you can see the beautiful skyscrapers and stuff. But honestly, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. It doesn't seem like a game so much. It almost seems like an interactive novel. There's probably going to be some sort of QuickTime events going on, but I wonder how much puzzle solving there will be, or how much interactivity there will actually be in the scenes. I'm sure you'll get the chance to like maybe explore the room to find objects relevant to the plot line, but
Yeah, probably.
but I don't know. It just seeing this trailer actually, like, for me, made me a little bit less interested in the game, because it seems like something that you like rent for a weekend and you play through the 15-20 hours and then you're done with it. I don't see anything here that makes me think that there's replay value in the game.
Yeah.
So what about you, Sandy? What was your takeaway from?
There was more context provided. It reminded me more of a movie trailer, and I hadn't realized that there was more than one ending, so I did not see the trailer with the I guess the ending that was distasteful to people. So I guess if they were trying to prove a point that there were many different endings, they could at least told us that
Well, that
somewhere
was like,
in the trailer.
That was like halfway in the trailer, like in the first, I don't know, like 2 minutes in, when the daughter dies, it says, but it doesn't have to end this way. And then it shows you a bunch of other.
Trying to say? I thought that was just part of the, of the story, So,
no, that's showing.
In the movie, you could have like the daughter die and then have something that says, but it doesn't have to be, and it would be a movie about the investigation or something.
No, I think you missed it. It's showing you that you can take different actions as the android helper robot, and
yeah, it's like showing the player that the full game will have like this gigantic interconnected web of things that could happen based on what you decide to do as the character, which is really interesting.
I mean, in that said, this material is inappropriate to children, and it is distasteful to see that kind of scenario.
I mean, it's an M-rated game. I don't think the game is intended for children. I don't even think the game would appeal to children, honestly. Like, if you were 10 and you watched that, would you want to play something like that? I don't think so.
I'd be bored. Yeah, I wouldn't be interested.
I don't think it would appeal to a 10-year-old or 11-year-old me. I see maybe like older teens, maybe like 16, 17 might have some interest in it. But that's probably where interest would start, I imagine, for the title. Yeah. And did either of you two watch the Insomniac Spider-Man trailer? That one is not controversial. That one is
I watched that one.
That one seems
I
cool.
did watch it.
It was all right. It was just like, I watched it. It was just like kind of a lot of B-roll. It felt like it was just random stuff that happens in the game. It's not really. See, I'm like way more interested in gameplay trailers. I always keep an eye out for those. Like,
right,
the Spider-Man gameplay trailer that came out. I think it was E3. It was not too long ago, and I've watched that trailer like 10 times because I just like I'm obsessed with just seeing what you can do in the game itself. But this trailer that was at Paris Games Week was like, yeah, it's cool, I guess.
It was a little more story. It was a little more.
Yeah. And I know they teased like Mary Jane and they teased Miles Morales, which is cool, but as a player, that doesn't really do much for me. I'm just like, okay, sure. I just moved on with my day after that. It's like, yeah, all right, new trailer.
That's fair. That's fair. So I'll toss this question out to our viewers out there. Which trailer caught your eye for Paris Gaming Week, and tell us why. And if you do, might be something in it for you. Just throwing it out there. But let's move on to the next story. Ubisoft is in the news recently for Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, Origins is doing very well for itself, right? It's selling a lot of copies. But it's also causing a little bit of controversy for supposedly a anti-crack
DRM thing.
A DRM decision made by Ubisoft. So it's no surprise that the game is using Denuvo, right? Denuvo is sort of like the premier DRM program out there. But it's being cracked quicker and quicker lately. So to give the game some added protection, Ubisoft has employed something called VM Protect, which is another program that's basically working in conjunction with Denuvo. That basically is like sending your computer a bunch of bogus commands and weird code so that anyone trying to figure out how the game runs hits a lot of dead ends. Well, some people are basically accusing Ubisoft of, saying that using the VM Protect thing pushes their CPUs to limits. People with older i5 processors that are like 3rd, 4th, 5th generation are seeing like a huge frame rate drops. And Ubisoft is basically saying, no, everything's kind of working as intended. So I'm kind of curious, like, which side you fall on, guys. Do you trust Ubisoft? Do you trust the some of these hackers essentially who are saying, hey, look, we're looking at the way this program runs and it just kind of like screws with your PC to the max? Like, who do you believe? Who do you trust?
Kind of nobody. I don't trust Ubisoft for much, and I also don't trust PC enthusiasts who just love to whine about DRM and stuff like that. So but mostly it's because my default assumption is just maybe it was just badly optimized. Maybe Ubisoft just didn't optimize their PC version very well, and that they don't want to admit that, so they're just saying, oh no, it's fine. that's where I go immediately. Other than that, I can't really say.
What about you, Sandy?
Yeah, I really don't know. I just worry that my computer won't be able to run it, or I have to go buy new stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, Ubisoft is saying that they gave a model. They said that an i5 2400, and so the 2 tells you it's a 2nd generation i5, which I imagine is what, like 5 years old, about 5 years old at this point, because we're up to the 7s.
Oh wow! I didn't know
So
that.
yeah, so basically what they're saying is a 5-year-old computer should be able to run this thing at the lowest settings, is what they're saying. But of course, it depends on if you have an i3, I think you're SOL. Maybe if you have an i7 from, whatever, 5 years ago, you should be okay. The recommended one is an i7 3700, so 4 years ago. But again, it all depends on which price point you went in on in the processor.
I mean, that sounds reasonable. I can't really. I don't know much about process. I don't know enough about processors to really call that out. So that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, so I have the game, but I also have a much newer CPU. I have like a sixth generation i7, so I haven't had any issues. But
when I built my computer, the latest one, so I guess it's always upgradable. So
right.
I'm gonna be like unnecessarily snarky for a second and just say this is why I have a PS4. So I can just throw it in there and it'll just run, and I don't have to worry about CPUs and shit like that.
But mine runs pretty.
I mean, sure, that's fine, but I don't need it to be all that pretty. I have a PC too. I have both, which is a great feeling. I don't really miss out on much, but for instances like this where I'm pretty sure my computer can't handle that, I can always just fall back to my PS4. It's great. It's nice. It's a good train.
It's good to have
you guys get on it.
It's good to have a plan B. I can't say that.
It is. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see this go one way or the other. Maybe we'll see some sort of definitive proof. Because honestly, without someone, running a bunch of tests with very fixed, hardware, there's no way to say for sure one way or the other. But I kind of agree with you, Connor. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. But it's hard to
sounds
say.
just like an optimization problem. Like we've seen that kind of thing a million times before, so this doesn't seem all that different.
So Ubisoft isn't denying that they're using EM Protect. They're basically just saying that everything's working as intended, and we're not trying to just screw you over on the CPU side. And right. It wouldn't make sense for them to do so, but it is what it is. Moving on, we have. Oh, look at this. So we have an EA story and some Nintendo stories. I always feel like we always tend to do Nintendo first, but we'll hold it off for now. Let's talk about EA, that other company we love. This is actually a very interesting story to me. So EA obviously is the maker of Battlefield, right? And older Battlefield games like Battlefield 2, Battlefield Heroes, Battlefield 2142, and oh my God, who knew there were so many? I didn't realize there was quite so many Battlefield games.
Oh yeah.
Their servers no longer exist, right? So the servers are no longer supported by EA. They used to be powered by GameSpy, which I think is now defunct. I don't believe GameSpy is active anymore. So basically, these bunch of hardcore fans, these people really loved these older Battlefield games, came up with a workaround and ran fan-made servers. They basically received a cease and desist letter from EA and had to cease and desist and had to shut the servers down. And to me, this is really stupid. The servers don't exist on EA's side. There's no way to play these games, and Battlefield games are mostly multiplayer, right? Some of them have a single player campaign, but the meat of these games is in the multiplayer. Where do you guys fall on this one? Because I the way I see it is there couldn't have been that many people playing these games, right? Maybe 1,000, 2,000. I can't imagine that there's 1 million people downloading Battlefield Heroes and playing it nightly. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
it was probably a very small amount of holdouts. I don't know.
I think they should allow it. I mean,
yeah.
However, if it's building on their existing technology, I could understand why
what I was thinking was just like, this is like a victimless thing. Like if people like, want to keep playing these old games that EA made, why do they have such a problem with that? Like, I just don't see who they're hurting, And I know from EA's perspective, they see that as like, you're using our product the way you weren't licensed to use it, or you weren't, intended to use it, and they just kind of like, they have the ability to shut it down, so they do, but just ability and motive are like different, where it's like, but why though? Who are they hurting? If some people have a private server or some GameSpy workaround for 2142, which looks like a pretty sweet game. I kind of missed the train on that. Didn't play it back in the day, but it looked cool. I just don't get, like, who are they hurting? Like, what's the harm,
Now it's been pointed out to me that I'm slightly erroneous. It looks like they claimed the gamers who went by the moniker Revive, the Revive network, they claimed 900,000 registered accounts. Now, it doesn't mean all of those were active. That's just how many people registered. Having said that, though, again, there's no alternative, right? These servers aren't being run by EA. GameSpy is defunct. They went defunct in 2014, so it's been 3 years. So, I mean, if you wanted to play this game, this was the only way to do so. So I still think you're more or less correct on this one. This is a victimless crime. There's no like DLC being released for these games. There's no money being lost. So
yeah, that's what I don't get. Is they do it because they can, basically. So I just kind of like, I'm not gonna come after them from a legal angle because they're in their rights here, but I'm just like thinking, dude, come on, guys, like, so what's the big deal? Like, be cool about it.
That's the thing, right? If they announce tomorrow, like, hey, we're going to have more servers up of, 2142. All right, cool. Then we're good.
Awesome.
Then there's no issue here. But if you're not going to provide the service, right, why stop someone else from doing it for free? It's not like they're making money. They're not charging anything for the service, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So
it's not like you're losing sold copies because you don't support the game anymore, so it doesn't really matter. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if, and I'd have to look into this, but I imagine they probably don't even sell the games directly anymore.
No,
like if I went to EA's website, I doubt I could buy a copy of this game. So
I'm gonna go on Origin and see if they have it.
I'd be really surprised.
Yeah.
I'd be super surprised. But yeah, so the other interesting thing was that the Electronic Frontier Foundation actually tried to get an exception from the Library of Congress under, for exactly this kind of scenario, but they got denied, unfortunately. So
wow,
we have a little ways to go in the video game preservation fight.
That's too bad.
Agreed. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, I think. Yeah, let's do Nintendo. So a couple of minor Nintendo stories. The first is, if you want to buy a Switch and you haven't been able to, I got some good news for you. Nintendo has promised increased availability for the holiday season. They plan to bump production by 4 million units, which is nice. I mean, if this is what you want to play, and I know with Super Mario Odyssey out, I know a lot of people want to play it. There's a much better chance that you find this in the stores, which is really cool. Have you guys picked this one up yet? Have you picked up a Switch or not yet? I haven't.
Nope. I hear that, when I hear the words Nintendo's gonna increase production for their Switches for the holiday season, I just think, well, the goddamn better. Like, I mean, like if they wanna have fourth quarter in the red, or I'm sorry, in the black, like that, they better. Like, there's no way they shouldn't. So that's enough course to me. Like, that's a duh. But I mean, even still, like, there might be Black Friday sales on it. There might be good deals on it. But I'm just like, I don't know. My girlfriend kind of wants one. She's been talking about, hey, the Switch looks kind of cool. I'm like, hey, if you buy one.
I have a friend that wants one for a birthday. So I think myself and some of my friends are going to chip in and get it for him. But
I get it. I'm not there yet personally, but I get it.
Yeah. So, and part of that, Would you say, Connor, because there's lack of third-party titles on the console?
I would say that's that's a big part of it.
Well, you're in luck.
Not
So
library there.
yeah, a bunch of third-party developers are scrambling right now to support the Switch, especially in Japan, right? Because a lot of people, I think, a lot of developers in Japan were kind of caught on the back foot on this one, especially like Capcom, from what I'm reading. But supposedly we're going to be seeing a lot more stuff coming out. But I don't know. I'm a little ambivalent on this one, actually, because it feels to me like everyone's just going to try and get something out for the sake of having something out. And that leads to shitty games.
And unfortunately, it's not going to be until 2019 until some of those third-party games come out.
That's probably right, unless they've started already and we're just now hearing about it. But if they're like just starting production now, they won't be out for a little while.
Yeah,
most likely. And
so I'm
skeptical too, because just the track record of third-party support on Nintendo consoles is spotty at best.
At best.
I mean, think about the original Wii. There was actually pretty good third-party support for the Wii, but that ended up taking the form of tidal wave of garbage shovelware games that no one gave a shit about. Where it's like it was the Wii was inundated with like really terrible third-party games. So like maybe Nintendo was kind of soured on third-party support after that.
Well, it was a combination of things, but also just that because the Wii was technologically so behind the other consoles at the time, the ports of the games that were simultaneously releasing for Xbox and PlayStation were just like shells of the regular games, and people didn't buy them.
There could be some cool third-party games coming to the Switch. I will have to wait and see, because I know what third-party support looks like for PlayStation consoles, because I've seen that before, because there's always been pretty good third-party support for PlayStation. But third-party for Nintendo, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what to expect from it. So it's like, I'm going to have to see what comes out. Yeah, I mean... It's good news, though, in general.
It's good news. To me, it really seems like the Switch is going to be another Wii in the sense that it's going to be really good for Nintendo. Nintendo is going to make bank, and that's great. I mean, I want to see them around. As a gamer, I'm not sure how good it's going to be for us. Like, there's going to be a few standout titles, just like there was a few standout titles on the Wii. But is it going to be like a cornucopia of amazing revolutionary gaming? I don't know. The jury's still out on that one. We'll see. We also had a tidbit about how people play their Switch, which I thought was kind of interesting. About 20% only play it in TV mode. Another 30% use it primarily in tabletop or handheld mode, and about 50% do both, which I'm a little surprised by that. If you guys, hypothetically, if you were to purchase one, how do you see yourselves using the Switch primarily? Would you mix it up, or would you just stick to TV or
handheld? Probably handheld. Convenient.
Yeah, I would probably keep it mostly in TV mode until I had like company over, then maybe switch it to like tabletop or just party mode or whatever I happen to have the games for. Because like I have a Vita. I have a PS Vita, and I barely use that as it is. Like on the occasion I want to play a game, when I travel or go somewhere, I have the Vita to do that. And so like I feel like I don't really see the Switch overshadowing. It's like it's already taken care of for me, so I'd probably keep it mostly in TV mode. But yeah, I
feel like I would be in that mixed camp because I have a commute of about an hour every day, so I might play it on the subway. But at the same time, I'd also be a little worried about playing it on the subway, like.
Yeah,
but having said that, I've seen other people play the Switch on the subway. Have you seen this, Sandy, on the New York City subway? People playing the Switch?
No, haven't.
I've seen it a couple of times. I'm not saying that like every person, but I like once a week I'll spot someone with one.
So like strength in numbers, then you just sit with them, play with them,
sit
and
next to them, right?
Nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Exactly. our next story, let's do Microsoft, and we'll end it on Blizzard. So, to I think the surprise of nobody, Microsoft has stopped making the Kinect. So I wanted to take a second to just talk about it. Why do you guys think the Kinect failed as spectacularly as it did? And do you wish it hadn't? Do you feel like there was a lot of untapped potential for the Kinect that never got used properly?
I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just at the VR Expo, and it seems like a lot of the VR stuff is including all these sensor and biofeedback and haptic gloves, and it's pretty much very similar, except for you're going to be in VR. Or even AR would have all of that. So Kinect is a little bit redundant in that way. It's too bad there weren't more applications made for it. It was interesting. It seemed to come out like after the Wii. It seemed like, oh yeah, now everybody's going to be interested in this.
Right.
But, it was expensive, and there wasn't a lot of stuff to do with it. So.
Yeah, I think that it never really overcame the problem that VR is struggling with right now, and that is how do you do movement? And that was the biggest thing, right? Outside of
destroying your room.
Right.
Like how do you move your character around on the screen, right? That was the issue. You could play certain, you either have the game be on rails, but that limits you to obviously just that sort of genre, or I don't even know, or exercise games, right? Like stuff where you're like punching and kicking, but how could you do an RPG? How could you do a first-person shooter that wasn't on rails? How do you do an adventure game that's not on rails? And I don't think anyone ever found a real solution to it, honestly.
Yeah, that was a huge problem for it. I was just thinking that, like, I'm not too sure. I would say that the Kinect technology failed so much as just kind of ran its course. It like kind of had its moment in the market. The market responded not too favorably, but now it's like kind of moving on to the next thing where Kinect is like not really relevant anymore, but it sort of set the tone for what we see VR as now.
A lot of people were creeped out by the Kinect, right? Because it was always on, always listening.
That was another element. That was like the whole Windows Big Brother's always watching you sort of thing. Like, please drink a verification can. That whole joke. Like,
yeah,
like that was another thing about it. But just the basic technology of it, I think, like, isn't. I think redundant was the word Sandy used. I think that's a good. It's just kind of like is replaced by what we're seeing in VR right now. So it's just kind of run its course. I think it just kind of had its time.
So the interesting thing here that the article kind of talks about briefly is that I think if they had added just a microphone to the Xbox and kept some of the voice commands, I think that would have been a good differentiator for Xbox.
I thought they did that.
You have to have like a USB headset plugged
really
in. I believe so. I don't believe that there's any onboard mic, and you're welcome to double check me because I don't have an Xbox.
Are you talking about the 360 or the Xbox One?
The One.
Because in the One, I thought it came standard with a microphone. Like I had, my brother had one, a buddy of mine had an Xbone, as I call it, and they would just say Xbox off, Xbox on, and they would just do it. So it's like
no, they must have had a Kinect.
I thought it came standard. I could be wrong, but like I had people I knew or know who had like the out of the box Xbox
to
One
the
model.
internet.
Yeah, let's check that out because like I thought they had just the out of the box model. They had like some kind of integrated voice command thing to like turn it on, turn it off, like change menus, stuff like that. And they didn't. That's weird. I don't know. I didn't have one myself, so I don't know firsthand, but I could have sworn there's some kind of.
Nope.
What? Huh.
Yeah, so the Kinect was what was providing the microphone.
Okay, so but was the Kinect like included with Xbox One or
originally it was?
That's what I thought. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they sort of did have integrated voice support, like a mic support thing.
Well,
like,
it was part
later
of the
on.
Connect. If you because
Right.
once they started selling the Xboxes without the Connect, then that's it, right?
I guess so, yeah. But you were saying like adding a microphone would have helped Connect, like
Yeah,
differentiate itself
if the
more.
console was just sold with an integrated mic, or if they added that once they made the Connect not mandatory, like for example the Xbox One S.
Oh, okay.
If that had, because that one doesn't have an integrated mic,
Okay.
they could have still. You can plug in a mic and then use it that way once, but then you have it's something you're buying separately instead of something that's included. Is what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Because those features I do think are useful, right?
Yeah, sure.
And the of course the other thing that a lot of people complained about, there was always a certain amount of CPU that had to be reserved for the Connect, and a lot of people didn't like that, or developers complained that they couldn't take full advantage of the power, et cetera, et cetera. So that also sucked. I always felt that like Microsoft should have overcompensated, like made it a little bit beefier, so that after the 10% hit, after that then it should have been even with the PlayStation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just me. Our last story has to do with Blizzard. And Blizzard is obviously, as you guys know, pushing the esports angle of Overwatch really, really hard, right? They're the ones organizing a league that's going to include cities. It's going to have like a World Cup thing. And, you know, they want Overwatch to be a legitimate sport. But they've run into a problem, and that is kind of hard to watch. If you are
No pun intended.
no pun intended,
Hard to Overwatch. Sorry.
Yeah, if you are a spectator, it's a little hard to follow the action at times, especially if you're like not a player. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So to address that, they're actually coming out with new sort of camera angles, new modes for essentially the cameraman to
Spectator mode.
Yes, a spectator mode to make it easier. They're calling it, to be official, they're calling it an eSports suite. And that's going to debut at BlizzCon, which is this Friday the 3rd. And it's going to have sort of enhanced third-person camera, better replays, and even a top-down map, so that the casters can better describe what's happening, that everyone can sort of follow along. This is really cool.
Yeah.
I see a lot of other companies copying them in the near future.
Yeah, I've been to esports events, and like it's in the dark and you watch this big screen and I have no idea what's going on sometimes.
Yeah. I've tried watching it like on Twitch, and even on Twitch, it's, you know, certain, granted, not really first person shooters. I've watched like MOBA type stuff. It can be hard to follow unless you are super familiar with the source material and you play it constantly. I think it's difficult, right? Like sort of, you know, if you take someone to a football match, even if they've never played football, you can give them a really, you know, they can catch on pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But with Overwatch, if you drag your boyfriend or girlfriend to an esports match, I think it's, you know, going to be a lot trickier to get them into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with like the MOBA type games you're talking about, like with like Heroes of the Storm, like even that has the advantage of being like a single kind of view. Like you can sort of just move your camera around and see everything happening basically.
Right.
You have to know where the action is. You have to know like what lanes are going to be active and that kind of thing. But Overwatch is like kind of hampered even more because you got to pay attention to everybody's specific cameras and like see what they're doing
and there's
what's
more
happening
people
to them. Yeah, exactly. And it's bigger teams too.
Yeah.
So this is a smart move, but you know, for sure, to really because if they want esports to be taken seriously and be accessible as like kind of a mainstream hobby, you know, pastime, they need to have, you know, avenues like this to get people into it. So it's probably a good move up on their part.
Well, so I'll close out the podcast by asking you guys a question, and that is, what do you think Blizzard still has to do? What is there left for them to do to make esports a thing where like the average person, at least, you know, is aware of it, right? Like, so for example, I know that there's the New York Giants and I know there's the New York Jets. I can't name you a single player on the team. I don't follow football, but I'm aware that they're out there, that they're playing games, that games happening this Sunday. I know this kind of stuff. So what does Blizzard need to do so that people are aware of Overwatch in the same capacity, or at least in that, going in that direction?
I have an idea.
Are you listening, Blizzard? Are you listening?
Yeah, take this down. Start writing down. So have your players, before each match, play the national anthem. And hear me out.
and don't kneel.
Yeah, have your players take a knee or just stay seated throughout the whole thing. And I guarantee you people will start talking about esports some more. Like that's guaranteed eyeballs. That's guaranteed publicity. Just
that's
go
one way of doing
try that out.
They were seated. Fine.
How dare they? And your DPS, your healers, they're unpatriotic. Yes.
Interesting. And I could see that working. I could see Donald Trump writing a very angry tweet.
Just as soon as you run a tweet, I mean.
Yeah,
you're in the big leagues then.
What about
low energy Overwatch players disrespecting our nation? Sad. Not nice. Yeah, I can. It writes itself, like the world we live in now.
It does. That Hanzo man.
Stupid Hanzo. Hanzo is the worst, and this is just proof. Oh God.
Disrespectful. Foreigners. Sandy, any tips for Blizzard that you want to provide?
Said get in the Olympics.
Get in the Olympics. That's actually not a bad idea.
That's the next goal.
I'm sure Blizzard is on that. Sure. It wouldn't surprise me. Unfortunately, that is all the show we have for you this week. I will keep my fingers crossed that we have some what the fuck stories for you next week, but you won't know until you check back. So until next time, I have been your host, Michael Schluger.
I've been sorry.
I'm talking. I'm talking. I'm Sandy Chen.
I've been Connor Howard. Thank you.
Have a great week of gaming. Push a lot of buttons for us. And for you, thumbs up, like, subscribe. We always love hearing from you at Pack Podcast. We'll see you soon.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks Assemble!